Recognize Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the audience today, we have a young man from Leavenworth County who is running for Leavenworth County Commission, and he's decided he wants to see how the legislative process works a little bit, and we're questioning his sanity. But it is Cody Reynolds from Leavenworth County. Welcome, Cody.
All right, welcome to committee. Committee, are there any requests for bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on, and I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 2427, and this will be establishing the position of Fiscal Integrity Auditor to be appointed by the Legislative Coordinating Council and providing for the duties of the Fiscal Integrity Auditor, including access to the state fiscal technology system software and requiring certain reports and recommendations to certain legislative committees. I'll now turn it over for a bill brief by our Assistant Revisor of the Office of the Revisor of Statutes, Jill Walters. Jill?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 2427, like the chairman said, establishes the position of Fiscal Integrity Auditor. This person would be housed in under the legislative branch. It would be hired or appointed by the LCC. This person would report to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate for the purpose of providing effective budgetary support, improved oversight, rigorous analysis and assessment and guidance concerning governmental fiscal procedures and auditing. The person would be in the unclassified service just as all legislative employees are, and they would receive compensation as determined by the LCC, which is also what happens in the offices. The auditor shall have extensive experience and recognized qualification in the field of governmental fiscal procedures, auditing, and analysis. And then the bill goes through what the Fiscal Integrity Auditor will have access to. So they will have unlimited access to all Kansas technology systems and software and used for accounting, budgeting, and expenditures from the Treasury. So they would have access to the current, the systems are currently the Sharp system and the SMART system. And then the bill clarifies that if there's any successor system that we purchase, that the state of Kansas, the we being the state of Kansas, purchases, that person would also have access to that information. They also grant all access to state agency books, accounts, records, files, and documents concerning fiscal matters, confidential or otherwise, and then however the current law is concerning confidentiality of those documents, that would transfer to the Fiscal Integrity Auditor. They would have to follow the same confidentiality rules as established by statute, and they would be subject to any civil or criminal penalties just like somebody else if they would violate the duty of confidentiality. They have the following duties: to examine budget expenditures with a focus on identification of waste, fraud, mismanagement, and abuse. They would also look at the expenditures to see if they were expended with legislative intent, how the legislature intended them to do. They would also recommend if there was any termination or consolidation or reappropriation of expenditures inconsistent with legislative intent. And then all these things that are listed there, they would actually then have to provide an annual summary of all these things, and they would give it to the Speaker of the House and the President, and they would specifically note the expenditures warranting further action or review by the state agency. If there's something that occurred outside the proper channels, they would flag that. The budget recommendations to improve government transparency and to demonstrate to the public the effective use of taxpayer money. And then they'd also recommend any possible budget savings relating to any of these things that they identified. They would provide an annual report of their recommendations to the Legislative Budget Committee. That's the statutory budget committee of 7 legislators, House Appropriations, Senate Ways and Means, and each House Budget Committee. The bill will become effective on statute book publication, and I'd be pleased to stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Jill, for going through that. And also, I failed to mention that Representative Hsu is filling in for Representative Alcala for today, so I just wanted to make a mention of that. So first, there's been some concern that was brought to my attention in regards to the confidentiality. Can you go through that again? Because there was concern that the inspector auditor would be able to look at too much information. as far as the checking accounts and everything. But you said that they would be held to confidentiality agreements, and obviously, go through that again, please.
Yeah, so sir, it's my understanding when any person gets access to Sharp or Smart, that they sign a confidentiality agreement, that they'll keep that information confidential, because they would, I mean, I'm just going to use me, for example, they would know like what health insurance I chose, who my dependents are, my social security number, those sort of things that aren't, you know, generally public. They would have access to that, and they would sign a confidentiality agreement. And then the second piece of that is if they have access to any books, documents, any sort of records that they need to look at for fiscal purposes. This is all tied to fiscal purposes. So I mean, you know, for an example, they just couldn't go on a fishing expedition about looking through my medical records. I don't think that would be ever appropriate. So it's tied to fiscal. So when they're looking at fiscal records, documents, if the law says Department of, and I'm just going to make an example, if the law, and it does say Department of Revenue has to keep something confidential, if this fiscal integrity officer is looking at those same records, they would fall under the same confidentiality duties that the Division of Revenue, or excuse me, Department of Revenue is under for them. And then there are penalties at times, that civil and criminal penalties, if employees or contractors of contractors of agencies release that information, that there could be penalties for that.
I think the latter is the purview of the integrity officer. What you mentioned first, is there any way to tighten that where they can't have the access to like dependents and health insurance and that? I mean, that's not the purpose of this position.
So I think, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do believe we could add some statements that says, you know, if you wanted to say records they cannot have access to would include personal information concerning dependents, concerning health insurance, we could, yes, there wouldn't be anything stopping us from
I think
saying that.
I would prefer to tighten the language on that. The next question that I have is in regards to the fiscal note. And in conversations that we've had, I know Representative Williams is going to be testifying as a proponent later, and she might address this as well. But it would actually be, after the bill was crafted, it'd be 2 fiscal integrity auditors, 1 in the House, 1 in the Senate. So the fiscal note would increase. The other thing that I would note about the fiscal note, I really don't see where the $25,000 for other operating expenditures, including office space, computer hardware, software, and furniture, would be relevant, because we obviously have that already in place. So I don't think we would need to have that $25,000, or actually $50,000 if you have 2 positions as part of the fiscal note. Are there any questions for Jill? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Jill, for giving us a brief on House Bill 2427. And as I mentioned before, we do have one proponent, and that would be Vice Chair Williams. And she is the chairperson of the Government Oversight Committee. And so I'll now turn it over to Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that on? All right, it's green. All right. Thank you, members. Thank you, colleagues, for taking a moment. And this idea actually stems from Speaker Pro Tem Blake Carpenter, as well as our leadership team. And the idea simply is that we pass our budgets, but then we don't really know or have the ability to follow up on those expenditures. And once we look at the expenditures, it's too late to do anything about it if it's not in alignment with legislative intent. This, I think, is going to be something that will pay for itself. Definitely, the expansion of government is not our aim. Our aim is reduction in waste and reduction in duplicative services, and just having that extra eye. We are accountable for for those taxpayer funds, and yet we don't go through the full process to really ensure that those funds are used exactly the way or even close to the way that the original intent was. My favorite two words up here really are accountability and transparency, and this actually accomplishes that goal by giving each chamber one auditor, which again, coming back to the fiscal note, I don't think it needs to be as high as what was estimated. But as we know, fiscal notes are often not accurate. It's really going to be up to the legislative process to set the parameters on what we put in the budget, and then the LCC. So it has its aims. It is not an over or expansion of power. That's not its intent. It's really to make us more responsible and in exercising our ability to be fiscally conservative and fulfill our constitutional duties. So again, it is really for us to close the loop on what we do and to really take advantage of what we learned from Speaker Pro Tem when he had access to the smart system, which we do not have. And it's very difficult for us to get that information. And I know this to be true because the chair and myself asked for many, many months for expenditure reports, and we did not receive them until after the fact. So that is why, and I will stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any questions for the Vice Chair? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is kind of a little exciting. So how soon are they going to be able to go through all this? I mean, will they get the full information ahead of time, or are they going to be kind of squashed like we are in our session? I want them to have more time.
Vice Chair Williams.
So the intent is that they would have access to the smart system on the passage of this bill when it's recorded in the statute book, I believe, but we would double check. And then they would have
Register.
real-time
I think it's
access
register.
to the smart system, statute book.
Oh, statute.
And of course, there would be some amendments. One amendment the chair already mentioned, and that would be to tighten it up and make sure that the confidentiality is highly protected. And then second of all, the amendment, which you don't see yet, which is to make this 2 auditors so that they could work for each chamber.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I could elaborate on that, I was going to make comments as well. I mean, I'm not listed as a conferee, but as the Vice Chair mentioned, during the last interim, we received information from the Speaker Pro Tem's office in regards to items that were deemed as questionable. In fact, I believe it was in the latter part of July that I went to the Speaker Pro Tem's office and we were going through those items. And it was spread over from the SMART system over 5 or 6 different spreadsheets. Now, keep in mind, this is also fiscal year 2024 of these items that were already spent, they're already let out. There was no way to retract those dollars back because they were already spent. However, I do have to mention that some of the items I would deem as questionable as well. So I challenged my Chief of Staff, Jeffrey, to go through all of that and compile it. He's still working on that for all of the budget chairs so that once you guys are done with your budget report outs, you can start analyzing some of the items that is respective to the budgets that's in your committee and go through those items that was provided to us from the SMART system by the Speaker Pro Tem's office. At the last count, Jeffrey has probably spent 35 hours going through all of this information. This position would be full-time. Jeffrey is technically not full-time. So in order for us to go through and analyze all of the 98 budgets and making sure that it has the legislative intent, this needs to be a full-time position where they can look at all of the expenditures by the respective budgets from departments and agencies year-round. And so we're not trying to look at a budget that was passed 3 years ago and 2 fiscal years ago, but we're looking at items in real time. And so we can, and like the Vice Chair mentioned, there were a lot of items that we passed in the last year's budget with legislative intent. And then the agencies and departments did what they wanted to do with that and did not follow through what the legislature had indicated. Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And was there any consideration given to expanding the access to information for legislative research and putting this person within that department rather than kind of a standalone position?
Yes,
Sure.
we discussed legislative post audit, KLRD, but really, if you want to look at expenditures, there's a perspective that you're going to look at that may be different from what a legislative post audit would do. And so, after speaking with the speaker and speaking with our chairman, it was of the opinion that this is something that each chamber really needs. And so, and something, frankly, that the speaker said that they have been contemplating for many, many years. So it was then determined that it would best fit actually directly under the speaker and the president, so they would have full access to determine what are we looking for, what is it that we want to put our priorities on, and how quickly can we disseminate this information to the committees. And so that's ultimately why it was selected to go into these areas.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this position a permanent one that aligns with the position that we have put the former president of Emporia State in at 50,000?
No, it actually has no connection to that. I was not even aware that that was taking place. That was a separate and distinct action from this. This is actually, when we amend it, would be two positions. They would be permanent positions, but as we all know, anything in the legislature is subject to change depending on the next legislature and the next leadership team. So that is the caveat.
Representative Ballard.
My comment would also be is, what is the role of the comptroller then?
The Inspector General's role is going to be a little bit different. Right now, statute dictates that it's those things that relate to Medicaid, anything that subsidies like the SNAP benefit. We did expand his authority a little bit last year. I'd have to look at the language to see exactly what that was. This is beyond that type of work. This is more accounting, auditing. So it's looking at those expenditures from the SMART system and saying, okay, wait a minute, maybe what is this limousine service? Did we really need that? And that's kind of what this is. It's just another set of eyes on expenditures for a $26 billion budget. And I think we're all getting a little bit more serious about having our own personal part of ensuring that we're spending as wisely as possible.
Representative Ballard.
I do question the need for this position, because in A, if you look at it, it said to examine the budget with the focus of waste, fraud, management, and abuse. What about the fraud department that we have in the Attorney General's office? That, to me, is a duplicate.
So I would say it's in no way duplicative. The Attorney General's office is not going to go over the SMART system. I don't think they even have access to the SMART system. Remember, this is about expenditures. This is not about budgeting. And we all know with government, it's almost unavoidable to have some percentage waste. We know what's happening in other states. We know what's happening within our own DCF regarding SNAP. We went up to 12% over payments or errors in payments. So you can only imagine whether it's unintentional or separate from our intent, that when you have a $26 billion budget, you probably, at the very least, you're going to say, well, we got at least $1 billion that probably didn't need to be spent.
Yeah.
Representative Ballard.
Did I hear you say this is two positions?
Yes, the original bill is one, but after talking to leadership and talking to the chairman, it was determined that the ask would be for two. We do believe that the two positions will pay for themselves many times over, because it'll be a set of eyes on expenditures we have never had before, and it'll actually be a great signal to every agency and every entity to be very thoughtful about your expenditures, because we will be looking at them.
Representative Ballard.
Will this individual or individuals be working with the Fiscal Affairs Office because they also are very knowledgeable about the budget?
Vice
Fiscal
Chair Williams.
Affairs or Inspector General, who are you referencing?
The people that we have right here sitting at the table are all the ones that they send for our budget meetings.
Could I
So-
answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So KLRD actually has to make requests. and Dan,
I guess not.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh,
I don't-
sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't- I don't mean to start trouble, but
No,
but
you go.
I am. Okay.
I defer to the chairman always.
The integrity officer, the idea is that they work in conjunction with not only the Department of Administration, but legislative research, revisers, all of the other departments and entities that we have. And they'll be working in collaboration with them to look into the expenditures that we have passed. And when we're out of session, I mean, like I mentioned before, this is going to be a full-time position, as I mentioned before. We already started doing this last interim when we received the information from the Speaker Pro Tem's office. And my chief of staff was, delving into these expenditures and spent countless hours working on it. And he's still working on it. And so they would work in collaboration. Representative Ballard. Vice Chair Williams.
Okay, so there was a fiscal note that our chairman referenced in his questioning, and it was about $225,000 per person, and then it also had $25,000 for additional costs for furniture and so forth. The chairman addressed that, and he said, I don't see why we need $25,000 per person. And then I also piggybacked on that discussion and with the comments that you could potentially have that position less. It would be up to the LCC and ultimately the budgeting authority of this body.
Thank you, Representative Williams, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so I think this is a good idea to try to do. I just have a couple of questions, kind of maybe of more semantics than anything. So if they're working for the LCC or however, or do they serve at the pleasure of the LCC, or because they're permanent? But this, to me, if the LCC is determining that person could have a job for 2 years, new speaker, new president, senate, whatever, those people could be gone. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, is the first one hired by this current members of the LCC stick around till they decide to, I'm trying to figure that out because it's a little bit different than some of these. So that's my first question, I think. If Jill
Vice
has
Chair
an answer.
Williams, and I think then Jill wants to respond to that question as well.
Okay.
Jill.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Rogers, I skipped over that in my brief, but the bill specifically says on page 1 in lines 15 through 17 that the auditor would be removed from office by a vote of 5 members of the LCC. And that is just like if the reviser, the director of research would be removed from their position, that's the same language as that.
Representative
I'm
Rogers.
sorry, excuse me.
That's right.
I just didn't include it since I was trying to be
Okay,
brief.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. So Representative Williams, you said that this is going to be kind of real time. So you think the majority of this will be done and decisions made by the LCC? Does like this Committee on Appropriations, will we have any vote, any say on, finding the, because it seems to me it's two-part. One, it's a quick ongoing scan, but you really don't know till after the money's been out there to know almost a year later if they did wrong. And then what I just quickly reading the bill, I'm still trying to figure out where the is it more fists in the air, by gosh, look at what we've done, rather than, if you want to scare people, start firing people for waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's what I can't find in here. So
Vice Chair Williams.
Sure, thank you. And I want to clarify that the bill is written for the LCC, but with discussions, again, with the chairman and our leadership, it is those individuals will be appointed by the Speaker and the President of the Senate, much like the governor makes appointments for her administration. Those would be subject to those individuals. So if those individuals were no longer part or had held those positions, that position could turn over or it could extend to the next person in leadership. But going to your question is actually on page 2, and it says that begins on line 31. It says the fiscal integrity auditor shall provide annual summaries. So they're going to actually, and I think we may have made an adjustment where it would be more frequent, but certainly they're under the direction of the Speaker and the President, and therefore, yes, they would be presenting information to us in continuation, and a list of such items that they might be presenting to us in real time. I will say that it wouldn't be up to us to fire anyone. I don't think anyone in this body does that anyway, unless we are part of a group that determines it, such as the LCC. The only other thing I would say is your comment about, well, this is going to be after the fact. They've already made the expenditures, but just remember, this body has an opportunity. If you know something 6 months after the fact or even a year, that's still a lot better than 2023 when we were looking at the expenditures. And therefore, this body may choose to do a clawback in a different way. We might say, okay, look, this is great that you spent this, but this is not really what our intent was. And I can give you an example. The Office of Early Childhood, in their budget proposal that they brought to the LBC, they had an additional position that we did not have in the bill. And so therefore it's up to this body to decide, do we want to fund that or not? So this body has the ability, even retroactively, to make adjustments to claw back in their operating expenses. So there's just plenty of things that we can do besides just having a watchful eye.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the reviser. Since the LCC does have the authority over these 2 positions, and not knowing what further confidentiality parameters may be put into this bill, if the federal government would start demanding, our constituents' personal data, could the LCC give directives to provide and share that data with other entities outside of the scope of what the administrative branch would do?
Vice Chair Williams.
Well, this is a very timely question because we talked about this in Legislative Post Audit yesterday, and I did put forth a question to Legislative Post Audit, which they have and they are reviewing. But that question really is about federal law. And federal law right now for many things, including SNAP benefits and other types of federal benefits, has a clause that allows administrative and enforcement to have access even to applications, even to documents, not just the data. So I think, and I'm not an attorney, Jill is, I think that enforcement comes on to not just the administration, but it's us, because we are the appropriators and we're the ones that have to determine, is our appropriation used in a manner in which is consistent with what we appropriated it for. So there are individuals that are looking into that and will certainly determine if we fall into that. If we do, then we already are qualified to look at those applications, and whether or not that individual passes them on. For example, the SNAP rolls, they wouldn't if it's in the courts, and right now it's in the courts.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd really like more clarification on that because I've already, this week, it's come out that some of the federal employees have potentially shared private Social Security data with groups that are looking at voter rolls. They have used insecure servers to store this data. So I just want to know what safeguards could be in place that that these 2 positions wouldn't be pressured to turn over my constituents' private data.
Vice Chair Williams?
Sure, and I think the chairman already addressed this. He requested an addition or amendment that would protect confidentiality, and I think in no way is this auditing position interested in personal information, Social Security numbers, or such. The Kansas Department of Revenue has access to all of this data, as well as our agencies have access to all of that information. So does the judiciary, and we had a breach there a few years ago, and that information went out. And so, yes, it can happen. But this position or positions put our personal data in no more jeopardy than our agencies already put our personal information in jeopardy. So I find it interesting that 2 auditing positions would be put on, up defense, if you will, when we already have literally thousands of employees that have access to this information. But 100% agree with the chairman, support anything we can to tighten that up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really, if I'm not able to ask that of the revisers at this time, I would like to make an official request, and if they could send that to me in an email, their position on, I really don't feel comfortable that that those safeguards are in place at this point. Thank you.
Representative Estes.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this idea. I seem to recall, and this might be more of a question for revisers or research, a time that the state checkbook was online and you could search it, because I searched it. And I think it happened when a computer system was going, and I'd like to know if that, I don't think it does, but I'd like to know if that still exists. And I think that would be a very interesting addition to this if we really want transparency. I think the public has a right to see what checks are being written.
Dylan will answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, the representative may be referring to some other states have an actual, what's called the state checkbook. Ohio, for example, Indiana, where all transactions are available on a website. In Kansas, some smart transactions are available, so you can see like vendor data and specific like sort of object level expenditure data. Also, if you go to the state treasurer's website, there's a cage receipts access, so you can see revenues and expenditures on that as well. So there's some data that is available. But the word checkbook is very reminiscent of a different type of system, which is available in some other states.
Representative Estes.
Thank you. And I would like to ask the conferee, can you give us some examples of the dollar amounts of the questionable expenses that have been verified?
Sure. Verification is very difficult. We had estimates originally coming from the Speaker Pro Tem's office of $1 billion or more, I believe. But with review, and Chairman's looking confused, so I'm going to let him correct me, but I thought originally he had come forth with a large number, but to verify that, going through that, Jeffrey did a closer dig. You're probably going to get a much smaller number, but in order to actually audit it and to follow up with each expenditure, it would take hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I don't know that any of us have that type of capacity.
Representative Estes. Well, and kind of answering that in regards to the Vice Chair, yeah, that when we received all of the spreadsheets from the Speaker Pro Tem's office, there was an amount, it was near about $600 million.
Okay, thank you.
That they had deemed as questionable expenditures from fiscal year 2024. After Jeffrey had analyzed all of that, the number did come down considerably, mainly because I had him focus on state general fund, not all funds. Because you had an array of restricted fee funds, you had ARPA, you had state general fund, and my focus was mainly for Jeffrey was on state general fund. That number is still around $16 million. That would be questionable. So like the Vice Chair mentioned in her testimony, even these 2 positions would more than pay for itself with a finding of $16 to $20 million that we could possibly pull back.
Thank you. Wow, 16 million.
Yes.
Wow.
Representative Helgerson.
Could you briefly explain what you're really trying to accomplish?
Yeah. Yes, I'd be happy to.
layman's terms.
Layman's terms, of course. That's all I do is talk in layman's terms. But anyway, I think that the goal is to really understand those expenditures. We're not privy to that information. It takes a lot of work for any one of us to make those requests. And for our budget chairs, they already have a huge job. But once they set the budget, there's no way for them to really know were those funds used appropriately. In fact, even the NGOs, we don't even have a clearinghouse list of our NGOs that I know of, which would be helpful as well. So I think, in layman's terms, our goal is to be better legislators and to have better information and data to make better decisions. If we're going to cut $200 million, we need to understand what the expenditures are. And right now, we don't fully know.
Representative Helgerson.
May I ask staff a question also?
You may.
Dylan, what information are you not able to get today?
Dylan.
Mr. Chairman, if you're talking about specifically information, we do have the ability to query smart data. We simply need to state what that information is that we're looking for and request it. We also have budget data via access to the IBAR system. I would probably have to spend some time with the proponent of the bill to discuss differences in other data repositories that they're envisioning in order to be able to provide a more complete answer.
Representative Helgerson.
That's the real problem in this. And we have gotten out of the habit of going back and holding the agencies accountable and ask specifically, how'd you spend the money last year? What did you spend it on? Was that the intent? And are we getting the outcomes this year after the money's been spent? The legislature has moved in a direction of giving more and more authority to the agencies to shift money around and here's the money, go do with it what you want. It used to be the agencies did not, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on more than the question, Mr. Chairman. But it used to be that we didn't give the authority to the secretaries to shift money from, I'll use the example, from this prison to that prison or for that line item to another, but we've given a lot of that authority up. And we don't go back and hold them accountable. You and I will have a lot more discussion. I totally agree with that we need to do a better job accounting because the money that came out or was highlighted, the 16 million that you say now that was spent by some universities or the golf cart and whatever else was spent, needs to be looked at. I do have a question. Did you ask the administration how they felt about this, or can we work in concert with them?
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make an assumption here, but we did actually make a request. The chairman and myself made a request in May for the expenditures. We did not receive them. One person, our Speaker Pro Tem, received expenditures from 2024 and 2025, and I only saw 2024. So that is not real time. So I don't have access to SMART, and the chairman at that time did not have access to SMART. And so the request was made by KLRD, and it did not get filled. So I think that can clearly say what the administration may think about this because they did not fill the request.
Representative Helgerson.
Final point. I think I in here identifies more with the administration, this administration not providing information and then taking the heat for it. So I totally agree that we have to have the information. I just don't know if this is the way to go about it. And I say that because you could put it in this position or redefine post-audit, legislative research, the administration is down, what, 6, 8 positions from where they were 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. I think that we have to define, we, legislators have to define what we want to do and what we want to spend our time on. And how we get the information and making sure that we're accountable, or that the agency's accountable for the money we give them. But I'm not sure this is the model. And it sounds like it's going to be another $500,000 that I question. But I appreciate your work, and thank you very much.
Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while we're speaking in layman's terms, and this may be a question for staff, so the SMART system, this is new to me, and pretend I didn't pay attention over the interim. I got busy. How did the Speaker Pro Tem gain access to it? Who has access to it? And who grants the authority of access to it?
Dylan.
Mr. Chairman, the SMART system is the statewide monitoring, accounting, and reporting tool. That contains the actual transaction data for the state. It's how the various state agencies maintain their budgets. So state agency personnel have access to it at their individual agency level. There is a division inside the Department of Administration that makes determinations on access, and the division of the budget in cooperation with the governor, sort of make those determinations. Secretary of Administration really is the one who makes those determinations as far as that access is concerned. We do requests for data. Of course, we have to be incredibly, careful when sharing that information to guarantee that there's no confidential information, taxpayer-type data that is shared when we make those requests for specific information from the Department of Administration.
Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So KLRD is supposed to have access to it. D of A grants the access to it. Legislators don't have access to it, yet we have a report from the Speaker Pro Tem's office.
Dylan, could clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak to any negotiations between the Speaker Pro Tem's office and the Department of Administration. What I just want to clarify is we don't have active, we make requests. So, you made a statement we're supposed to have access. We make requests to the Department of Administration for reports from the SMART system, and that's how that works.
And that'd be the same way with the Speaker Pro Tem's office. They do not technically have access. They requested the information for fiscal year 2024 from the Department of Administration.
Okay, and if I may.
Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So upon a request, legislators do currently have access to the information. How about legislative post-audit?
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you. I serve on legislative post-audit, and the legislative post-audit is only going to ask for information through the audits that are approved by that committee, that 10-member committee. So if the committee is not asking for regular expenditure reports, it is not going to happen. In addition, that's not the bandwidth of LPA. They are audits that are policy. They're not just fiscal audits. They are also policy audits that look over data and information based on the request. And by the way, again, we did not receive the information. We requested it. You have to put in a special request to have it, and then you might get it 3 months, 7 months, or a year later, or never.
Representative Owsley.
And maybe a question for staff. How many FTEs do we have in the LPA? So we would 26.
You have 26.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So the LPA also serves at the pleasure of the legislature. If we wanted to direct them to do this, we could. And you're a member of that committee that determines which audits go in the hopper. I don't know if that's still terminology used in that committee or not, but I'm just trying to figure out why we need this position to accomplish the goal. When part of the statement of the mission here is to identify duplicative and redundant services, I don't see why we couldn't accomplish the same thing right now with the resources available. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Williams.
Certainly, certainly, Representative. Every bill is a matter of opinion, and it's a matter of selection by those peoples or individuals that present that bill, and then it is up to this committee and the respective chambers to either approve or disapprove of it. Certainly, you could have submitted a bill to do exactly what you said. We just submitted a bill with a different vision.
Representative Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really didn't want to jump on my soapbox too, but everybody had their soapboxes and I felt left out. I hear a lot of these questions coming from the other party, and all it tells me is that they clearly do not understand what it takes as a chair of these budget subcommittees to get information. You say simply ask. Well, I'm telling you, I've asked repeatedly, time and time and time and time again, from institutions, from agencies, from everybody, and we don't get the information. And we all here feel the pressure of the budgetary process as it is. Some of us have been around long enough to remember what it was like, you know, 1,000 different what it was likes, really. We've changed so many times, I'm sure, over the years. But this one thing hasn't changed. We don't get the acute information that we request. We do not get it in a timely manner to make coherent decisions, and we need it. So I'm hearing, well, why don't you just ask for the information? We get the information several years down the road after the money's already spent. I want the information now when I can make a decision that steers us in the way that the state needs, an immediate decision. And it sounds to me like several of us have spawned new ideas for this, but right now this is the idea we have right here. And frankly, I wish I had this tool 6 months ago.
Okay, right now, those sitting in the gallery, please adhere to the committee rules where there is no photography or videoing. It's stated in the rules. Representative Turk.
Thank you. So what I want to toss back to the conferee is, will this position give those budget committees in the legislature the ability to inquire information during session that can help us make decisions in our budgetary process?
Vice Chair Williams.
Absolutely. To the extent that the president and the speaker are helping their chairs, absolutely.
Representative Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just given the hypothetical numbers right here we've heard in this committee in comparison to the possibly inflated, maybe not inflated document stating what it would cost, it sounds like this will pay for itself. And all of us in our budget subcommittee see the numbers. Millions here, millions there, billions overall. It's a decision here, guys. We're budget committee. We understand budget decisions. It's an investment to save money. We do it every day. Thank you.
Representative Walsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback with Chair Turk, this is a shorter version, but we maybe get 14 pages on something, and I don't think there's a KLRD auditor that hasn't gotten something from me that said, I need more information. And I don't want that information for 3 months or 2 months at the beginning of the year. In order to do a really good job, we need to dive in deeper. And I think this position would also help with, here's one really big problem area you need to be looking over here, and we can get to it sooner. So I absolutely agree with Chair Turk.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps the other party is asking questions because we didn't know a whole lot about this position. Now, perhaps other people knew more about it than we did, so we're asking for clarification. But the comment I'd like to make, my concern is, are these two positions going to be more like a Doge?
Vice Chair Williams.
Well, I think it's going to be more than a Doge. I think it's going to be just that constant eye on expenditures. But certainly it would have elements of that because we do want to make sure that everything is in alignment to the intent of the legislature. So it could certainly have that element, but it's really meant as a tool, as you heard our budget chairs just speak to. They're underwater. They can barely, manage the budgets that they have. And if they had an additional tool, it would elevate their ability to make good decisions. It would elevate all of our abilities to make good decisions. So yes, it could include that, but no, it is not all encompassing. That is not the motivation. The motivation is to have the best access to information.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for your proponent testimony. As I mentioned before, I was going to make some comments. I think I've already done that during the conversation that we've had with Vice Chair Williams. I'm not showing any other proponents in regards to House Bill 2427. If there's anybody that wishes to address as a proponent in 2427, here's your chance. And then I'm not showing any opponent or neutral testimony as well. So if there's anybody that would like to testify as an opponent or in a neutral position, here's your chance. All right, not seeing any. We're going to go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2427. Right now, I will have Dylan Deere with Legislative Research Department give us a brief update on performance-based budgeting. Dylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite understandably, the PBB is a little hard to navigate due to the size of the PDF. I had promised to you formally that we were going to have a better way to access that, particularly during committee. I'm going to do a quick demonstration and show you where that data is now available via Power BI on our website. If you give me just one moment. Make sure this comes up. Okay, so this is our KRD website. If you go to the state budget section at the top, this is the regular widget that you're going to see that's going to give you the live output, which will probably start up next week as far as where your current spend is. But if you go to statewide budget publications, and then on the top right-hand corner is performance measures, what it will pull up now is another Power BI interface. I'm going to go ahead and maximize it for our purposes here. All right, and so what you can do is you can filter by agency. We'll look at the adjutant general. All right, and what that's going to do is it's going to filter all the various performance measures. And also, inside of this interface, we give you all the actuals data that we have been collecting since we sort of started this process back in 2019. And so you'll be able to see that, as well as you can also filter by sub-program as well, and you can see that. And you can also filter by fiscal year as well, and drop down that data. And so while you're in committees and you're reviewing budgets, if you wanted to pull this up on your computers, you'll be able to see the various performance measures as well as the data that we have received. Once again, I'm going to state for you in the committee, we don't determine what these measures are. We don't tell them whether they're good measures or bad measures. We're simply making them available for you on this website to make it more accessible for the legislature. But anyway, that widget will hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody to get through and see that, and I would stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there questions for Dylan? Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you. Just really quick, I'm on the site. You say that we go to state budget, we pull the state budget down, and where are the performance measures?
So go to statewide budget publications.
Okay.
Okay, and then you'll see PBB in the top right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, see none. Thank you, Dylan. We'll go ahead and move on to our budget report outs this morning. And so the first that we have up is the budget report outs by Chairperson Walsinger with the general government budget. I believe you're starting with the Board of Cosmetology. Chairperson Walsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kansas Board of Cosmetology, I'm delighted to say, as bad as it was last year, we have a new director, and she has been working to whip that agency up into good shape, and she is far more transparent and takes a lot more accountability. So we were very pleased to visit with her. The Kansas State Board of Cosmetology does examinations and continuing ed requirements for tattooing, cosmetology schools, instructors, cosmetologists, estheticians, manicurists, electrologists, tattoo artists, body piercers, and permanent makeup. I lost my space. And permanent makeup. And they operate through 3 different divisions: administration, licensing, and enforcement. Their 2026 budget submits a revised estimate of $1.3 million from the cosmetology fee fund and 14.5 FTEs in FY26. The revised estimate is equivalent to the amount approved by the 25 legislature. The agency didn't submit any supplemental requests in 2026. The special committee and the House Committee on General Government all concurred with the agency's revised estimate. And do you want me to just move on to 2027?
Are there any questions on 2026? See none, move on to 2027.
All right. The agency once again requests 1.3 million, all from their fee fund, 4.5 positions, full-time positions for 2027. It's a biennial agency, and its budget for this fiscal year was also approved by the 2025 legislature. This is an increase of $18,472, or 1.4% above the amount approved by the 25 legislature for FY 2027. It reflects the legislative pay plan adjustment that was omitted for 2027. The Special Committee on the State Budget and the House Committee on General Government Budget all concurred with their budget. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairperson Wassinger? All right, seeing none, Chairperson Wassinger, I'd entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve the Board of Cosmetology budget as presented for 26 and 27.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Turk. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairperson Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Board of Barbering takes care of the barbers in the state of Kansas and barbers' colleges as well as shops that are currently licensed. I'm missing this. Hold on. Okay, for 2026, the agency submits a revised estimate of $261,873, all from their barbering fee fund, and 2 FTE positions in 26. It's equivalent to the amount approved in 2025, and the agency didn't submit any supplemental requests in 26. The Special Committee on State Budget concurred with the agency's revised estimate, as well as the House Committee on General Government Budget. The Senate Committee for Local Government Transparency and Ethics concurs with the Special Committee's recommendations for FY 2026. For FY 2027, the agency requests a revised estimate of $262,654 from their barbering fee fund with 2 positions as well. This is the biennial. We talked about that. No supplemental requests in 27. The Special Committee concurred with the agency's revised estimate for 2027, as well as the general government budget, and as well as the Senate Committee on Local Government Transparency and Ethics. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions? All right, seeing none, Chairperson Wassinger.
Before I make the motion, I want to say that this is a two-person, you look at this, it's a two-person office. They are basically in a closet working together, and they have been more than transparent with anything that they've done, and they're working on a shoestring, and I commend them. With that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the Board of Barbering budget for 26 and 27.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Mosier. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairperson Wassinger.
Okay, the Kansas Board of Hearing Aid Examiners. And that's not right either. Lost. All right, there we go. They just put more than they wanted to. All right. The FY 2026 this agency had $38,255, all from the Hearing Aid Board Fee Fund. Their revised request has an increase of 2016 in travel expenses. The agency has indicated this is associated with reimbursement of examiners' mileage and lodging costs while traveling twice a year to Emporia for a biannual examiners meeting. The building request included a decrease of $1,500 in building rental fees And then the revised request was included in a decrease of 570 in all other adjustments. These expenditures include printing and binding services and commercial communications services. For 2027, they increased the same amount of $1835 in travel expenses because of the reimbursement of examiner's mileage and going to Emporia for a biannual examiner's meeting, and their decrease of $1,200 in building rental fees, as well as a decrease of $761 with all other adjustments. These expenditures include printing and binding and data for processing supplies. With that, Mr. Chair, I stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairperson Wassinger for 26 or 27? All right, seeing none, Chairperson Wassinger, I'd entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve the Kansas Board of Hearing Aid Examiners budgets for 26 and 27.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Mosier. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? That was a very weak aye, committee, but motion passes. All right, thank you, Chairperson Wassinger. We'll turn it over to Chairman Turk with the higher education budget, and I believe he's starting with the State Historical Society. Chairman Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Kansas State Historical Society, the agency requests a revised estimate of $9.4 million all funds, including $5.8 million SGF and 81 total FTE positions in 26. It's an increase of $255,902 above the amount approved by the 25 legislature. This is due to the three supplemental requests: the Kansas Museum of History opening, $216,582 and 3 FTE positions; the Curtis House State Historic Site, $41,904 and 1.5 FTEs; and the Shawnee Indian Mission West Building Rehab for $200,000. The SBC motion deleted those, which left it up for our committee to debate and discuss and prioritize. The House Committee on Higher Education added the $200,000 in all funds, special revenue funds, for the Shawnee Indian Mission West Building Rehab. And this investment will allow them to draw down federal funds in the following year. That $200,000 is not SGF, it is special revenue. Given the story we heard on the Shawnee Indian Mission, we were kind of up against the wall. We had a decision: we do something or it continues to degrade. I know there's a lot of discussion and debate about what the future of that particular area holds, but it doesn't. We decided it did not necessarily mean that we could just forfeit our obligations in the meantime. So in the meantime, we're going to allow them to invest their funds to keep it running. Looks like the Senate Ways and Means Higher Education heard it as well. But for our committee, that was the only adjustment we had on that year. And I will stand for any questions on that.
All right, so the first question that I have is in regards to fiscal year 2026. As far as your recommendation, it was only the $200,000 in special revenue funds that was added, aside from, I see the governor also recommended as well. And actually, committee, if you'll reference, I think this is the first budget that we've had where we've not only had Senate Ways and Means action, but we've also have the recommendation by the governor. So that's on a yellow sheet for the State Historical Society. But the governor also added $28,381 for the replacement of the History Museum air unit chiller. Was there any, no, I can talk about that. That's a reappropriation. It was in regards to the Quindara Ruins Task Force. She also recommended $39,400. Was there any discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, are you asking if there's discussion on the chiller itself?
Both items.
Yeah, we did discuss those. I believe we, and maybe Edgar can correct me, but I believe we addressed the chiller in the next year. Okay, it appears it was included in this year, and it's just not in my notes, so.
Okay, right, so that was included. And then, this might be a question more for Chairperson Estes, because I know you're the I believe you're the chairperson of the Quindaro Ruins Task Force, and that was reappropriated. So you give us an update on, is it $40,000 that was allocated in last year's budget?
Yes, 40,000 was allocated. We had a difficult time, took a considerable time to get some of the appointments through, so we will actually be beginning our work next Friday.
So this is for fiscal year 2026, so that ends on June 30th. Would you need the 39,400 that is recommended by the governor?
In 20.
Fiscal year 26, that was reappropriated.
Well, yes, we still need to do our work.
But do you need the total $39,000 to have committee meetings?
There's a considerable staff work. It would be helpful, but I understand there may be other numbers that other people are comfortable with, but so we'll go with the will.
I'm just wondering, I mean, is 20 or 25,000 sufficient instead of 39,000?
25 would be, I think we could do 25.
You could do 25?
Yes.
Okay. So I would, I'd make a motion, or if you want to make a motion for the 25.
Go ahead.
Okay, I would make a motion that we just reappropriate 25,000 of the 39,400 state general fund dollars for the purpose of the Quindaro Ruins Task Force. Seconded by Representative Hoffman. Discussion. All right, seeing none, I close on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Any questions for Chairman Turk? Going on to Senate Ways and Means, added the 3 positions for the museum opening, but I don't see that in 26 from the governor. Do you know why? Do you happen to know why the Senate added them and the governor did not?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe it's because Senate does not understand how that would, the timeline of which that was be impacted. I do believe we addressed that in the next year, sir.
Okay, so we'll wait for 2027. All right, any other questions for Chairman Turk? Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And these may be a couple quick questions that you may not have, but maybe research does because it goes back just a ways. But for our edification, how much was the estimation for the Curtis Museum in totality for capital improvements or anything related to that? That wouldn't be the current budgets. And I'm also curious, maybe research has the total expenditures for the renovations to the museum, the Kansas History Museum that we went to last night. Many of us had the opportunity. It was beautiful, and just could you provide that information? Thank you.
At a later date or now?
If it's available, great. If it's not, a later date would be good.
Okay,
thank you.
Any other questions for Chairman Turk? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question as a comment. I've been to the Shawnee Indian Mission, and it's in dire need of helpful repair and update, so kudos.
Any other questions? Representative Helgerson.
Last year, with the, when we put in the 300,000 for the purchase, which I assume they took, and it was sold for 300,000. They had put down they were going to need some staffing, but also my memory is $100,000 of immediate rehab to make it secure and weather tight. If we're not putting any money in, I assume somebody has secured it to hold it available since we're not going to operate it as a site since there's no staff there.
Well, and I would say we authorized $300,000 with also the intent that there was going to be private fundraising for the purchase of the home and rehabilitation. So I don't know. We'd have to get it from staff whether the $100,000 for the initial rehabilitation. Our initial thought was to just have that be purchased. The private donations might have paid for the rehabilitation.
Then I would, I think I had heard differently from the agency. So I'm asking the question, did you ever ask the agency how they're doing on the fundraising and how's the facility and did they secure it?
Chairman Turk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, no, because my memory doesn't go back as far as yours on this particular issue. I knew that was coming. We didn't dig too deep into it because we weren't really offered a lot for it. We didn't get the impression as a committee that it was as pressing as other issues, so we didn't dive into it in debate. As far as the positions were concerned, it was the consensus of the committee that we would focus our funds on other things. Curtis was just not the top of the triage list. It was just that simple. If you have additional questions that you want me to inquire, I'm all for it.
As the vice chair mentioned, obviously a lot of us were at the event last night at the Kansas History Museum and actually had a conversation with the director who is sitting in the gallery. I see Director Zollner there. And we had a discussion specifically about the Curtis House. And actually, it's ready to be opened. They've done a lot of rehabilitation to the house. They actually want to have kind of like interactive exhibits. And I believe he had told me last night that they're going to be open between Wednesday and Sunday. We did purchase the home of the only vice president that ever served from the state of Kansas of the United States. There's a demand, and there is actually anticipation of high traffic. So I believe Chairman Turk is going to address the staffing in 2027, but there is a need for staffing, and the house is ready to be on exhibit. Any other questions on 26? All right, seeing none, Chairman Turk, may we move on to 27.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to be clear, we do address staffing, but not necessarily the Curtis House. Again, and it might just be the nature of not only myself but my committee to be stingy with FTEs. We will discuss the addition of FTEs to this agency in 27, but not necessarily the Curtis House, to be clear. With that being said, 2027, the agency requests $10.8 million all funds, including $7.1 million SGF, 82 total FTE positions for 27. This is an increase of $1.7 million, including $1.6 million SGF above the amount approved by the legislature in 25. The increase is due to the 7 following enhancements: the capital improvement repair, $250,000 SGF, archives rehab and repair for it says a new shelving unit, but let me preface it with it's not like the shelf you would think. think something more high tech. The total for that's $341,000 SGF. The Grinter Historic Site parking lot request, we saw this last year for $200,000 SGF. Museum opening funds at $375,872, all funds including $345,081 SGF, and 3 FTE positions. The Curtis House request was $112,325 SGF and 1.5 positions. They've additionally asked for an IT manager at $83,870 SGF, an additional FTE, and in addition, they asked for some more funds for the Shawnee Indian Mission at $625,000, including $206,250 SGF. The special committee on state budget, that was all caught up in the global motion. So what we as a House committee decided to add back was $341,000 SGF for the archive rehab and repair for a new shelving unit. And that debate essentially came down to pay this amount now, wait for total failure, and pay more later. We chose, obviously, the lesser totality of that one, and we chose repair it now. The shelving unit is giant shelves sliding on rails moved by electronic motors. And these motors are what have failed. Obviously, this is dated technology. We know how hard it is to find technology made in the 90s, 80s, and 90s. It's impossible to repair now. So they've come up with an innovative solution and a cost-effective solution. We chose to support them on that. Additionally, we added $250,000, including $230,000 SGF and 2 FTE positions for the museum opening in 2027. Taking our debate from last year in this committee, we discussed the importance of getting the museum rolled out and in working in effective order as soon as we can. And so we chose to provide 2 more FTE positions. And that came through the testimony that we received and the explanation as to how they were working their shifts. And that seemed like a good compromise for the committee. $418,750 all funds and special revenue funds for the Shawnee Indian Mission West Building rehab for 2027. And this was that match I mentioned. So our 26 investment brings this down. Senate Ways and Means met on it as well. They've got their opinions. And with that, sir, I will stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Turk. So, again, if you reference the governor's recommendation, your committee aligned with the governor, but yet, I think you kind of mentioned this in 26, but the Senate Ways and Means Committee did the 3 full-time positions. Do you know why the governor's recommendation was only 2, and then that was what the Budget Committee also did?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the time, we didn't have the governor's recommendations, so our agreement is in just coincidence, I guess.
Okay.
If we did, we weren't referencing. I don't believe we did. At some point, and I've slept since then. At some point, we didn't have the governor's budget, but then we did, and we didn't get to see it in discussions until just recently. So.
Okay. I guess that's kind of ironic that
Yeah.
the 2 align together. Any questions in regards to fiscal year 2027 for the State Historical Society? All right, seeing none, Chairman Turk, I'd entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I move that we pass out the Kansas State Historical Society budgets for 26 and 27 as presented.
And amended.
And amended. You're right, and amended.
All right, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Estes. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Chairman Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to the State Library. This agency requests a revised estimate of $6.8 million, including $4.7 million SGF, 29.5 FTE positions. It's an increase of almost $80,000 at 1.2% above the approved amount in 25. This is due to $126,021 SGF reappropriations for operating expenses in 2026. These motions were, again, wrapped up in the special committee's global motions, and the House Committee on Higher Ed decided we were going to add the $124,131 SGF reappropriation for operating expenses. And this includes the grants to library system, the talking books, and the blind information access program. These expenses were already in motion, and this is one of those times where our timing is just off, which is why it ended up being a reappropriation. The investments are made, and the committee decided that it's a timing issue of no fault of the agency, and will continue their funding. With that is really the only adjustment we made as a committee in 2026. I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions in regards to fiscal year 2026? Seeing none, you may move on to 2027.
The State Library in 2027 requests $7.4 million, including $5.2 million SGF, 29.5 FTE positions. It's an increase of $647,742 above the approved 2025 amount. And this is due to the an increase in state grants in aid to libraries enhancement of $483,000 and a courier subsidy enhancement at just under $100,000. Again, the special committee global motion swept those out, and the House Committee on Higher Ed concurred with the special committee's recommendations. The Senate did not.
I see that they added local or aid to local libraries of $96,650 and $322,000 for state grants and aid to libraries. And the governor also added $483,000 in regards to the state grants and aid to libraries. All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairman Turk? All right, seeing none, Chairman Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out the state library's budget for 26 and 27 as presented.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you, Chairman Turk. We'll now move on to the budget report outs by the Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee, and there is only one that Chairperson Mosier has this morning, and that's the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. Chairperson Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody knows what Wildlife and Parks does, so I'm not going to go through that. The commission was actually changed back in 2024 as far as the assignments. You can read about that. The agency, the administration comes from staff in Topeka, and the field operations are managed from the Pratt office. This agency is funded by user fees and federal funding. The user fees are the Wildlife Fee Fund and the Parks Fee Fund, and those are pretty self-explanatory. We can talk more if anybody has questions. In 2025, there were 7 million visits to Kansas parks, contributing $150 million in economic activity. The first question people might have, if you're looking at the agency request, the $5 million of SGF back in 2025, that the agency was using the federal funds that they had obtained. $3 million went to the Flint Hills Trail work, and dam repair was $2 million, and that's, again, these are federal funds, and those were dams repaired on state fishing lakes. And also they spent $200,000 on a shower house at El Dorado State Park with intentions of updating shower houses across the state. The wages in 2026, the 95,435, that increase is due to the enactment of the legislative pay plan. So their ask in 2026 was 128.8 million, including the 95,435 SGF because of the pay plan, 4.3 million from IDF, and 465 FTE positions in 2026. Looking at the capital improvements, they requested in their capital improvements, they requested 600,000 from ARPA for Little Jerusalem State Park and the Lehigh Portland State Park. If you look at the ecological services, which are services that the agency provides to conserve, protect, and enhance endangered, threatened, and non-game wildlife populations and their habitat. Wildlife and Parks wants to create and preserve ecosystems with native biological diversity for generations to come. There are 460,000 acres of public land and water in 177 different parcels. And I would ask you to keep in mind that right now 62 law enforcement agents ride herd over all of that, all across the state. There are 45 state fishing lakes, 75 wildlife areas, 23 state-owned public domains, 31 leased federal properties, including 22 federal reservoirs, and 3 privately owned leased properties all across the state. 62 people take care of that. Let's see. The Special Committee on State Budget, when looking at Wildlife and Parks' agency, revised their estimate by deleting the EDIF request of 61,523. The House Committee on Ag and Natural Resources budget concurred with the Special Committee's recommendation. However, after a lot of visiting back and forth in committee yesterday, it was voted on to, if you look at the governor's budget, she added back 3632 of that 61,523. It passed on a bipartisan vote of 4-3 with one committee member missing, and in conversations with Wildlife and Parks this morning, they are okay with letting that go. So if we need to make a motion to delete that, we'll have to do that. Are there any questions on 2026?
All right, committee, are there no questions? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not making budget recommendations on this. It's just some things that I think the committee ought to be aware of. One is that on that $200,000 for a shower house, that was probably one.
Yes.
Our procurement process has some requirements in there that preclude almost every builder in the state. And we really, I think, and this is more broadly speaking than just wildlife and parks, we really need to look at our procurement processes because I think that we could build a heck of a building for $200,000 and instead we get a shower house for it. And that's in my mind our failing, not wildlife and parks, that's our failing in the procurement process. I think we really need to look at that. Now, more case side to wildlife and parks, however, one of the things that came out in the Joint Committee on Rules and Regulations was that they were reducing the catch limit for trout. And I thought, trout in Kansas? I didn't know we even had trout. I would imagine it'd have to be a very low number for a catch limit. After digging into that just a little bit, we buy trout to bring to our state that won't survive. No, they won't procreate or anything like that. They'll die. I mean, we have our water's too warm and not oxygenated enough. So we bring them in for the purpose of selling trout permits, so people can catch trout in Kansas. Not exactly wildlife. I'm not sure what I'd call them. I mean, pets maybe. I'm not sure what we'd call those if we're bringing them in. I had kind of, just for entertainment purposes, I had a little bit of a brief line of questioning, asking if perhaps we could bring in rhinoceros, because I'd love to hunt rhinoceros in Kansas. That'd be fantastic. And of course, that was absurd. But in my opinion, no more absurd than buying trout to then sell trout licenses that never, ever in the history of the program has ever made up for the cost of purchasing the trout. So just something for us to keep an eye on is something that I think you need to know when we're dealing with these budgets. Sometimes they don't make as much sense as they do on paper when you dig into the specific numbers. I just thought I'd share that a little bit for your own edification and for when looking into some of these programs' budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carpenter would also like to edify us on this topic.
Will. A couple of subjects there for my esteemed colleagues that obviously doesn't fish and understand the process. So, but let's take on the shower house first. And I agree with you 100%, a $200,000. The only thing that I'll add to that is that shower house has to be armored. It is almost embarrassing. It was torn down. They had stainless steel toilets, and they tore those up. All the mirrors in it were stainless steel. Everything that could be actually tore up was tore up. And so no doubt that adds to the cost of building a shower house when you're trying to armor it from the kids or whoever it is that's tearing those up. So, but I do think $200,000 is a lot of money, but I do think that you would not believe that shower house. Been there many times, and it is bizarre how people will tear up something that's their own. So I will tell you that. As far as the trout deal, let's go fishing sometime, and I'll show you. We have lines of people at El Dorado below the lake. They release those trout there. The trout stamps are like $19, and we try to do pretty much pay for it with those trout stamp monies. But the price of trout went up. That's why it came before JCAR was. The price of trout went up because of, I'm not exactly sure why, but we did raise the prices of those fees to, and I can't believe people were actually buying them, but they wanted to pay $20 for those permits. So, but at El Dorado in the spring, before fishing season gets going, there are lines of people there at where they release those trout. So I think Wildlife and Parks is doing their mission as far as trying to get people outside and enjoy the outdoors. And the other thing is, it doesn't cost a dime of SGF money. These got, what we got, $95,000 in SGF. So none of this money is state general fund money. And that's another subject that I'll just bring up right now. I do have a bill to raise the park fees this year. If we're going to have the park fees, the parks fund themselves, then they need the money to operate the parks in a manner that they can. Our parks, we should be proud of our parks. 7 million visitors, as the chairman mentioned, 7 million visitors, bringing in $150 million a year in economic development money. And our parks all need the help. Those fees haven't been raised in 10 years, and we are really far behind on that. So at some point in time this year, I will be introducing a bill that raises those fees so we can fund our parks so that they are funded at a rate that we can be proud of our parks. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that pretty much completes my case. If we have to raise our fees because we're spending it on things that don't pay for themselves, that aren't wildlife in Kansas, then perhaps we should revisit the overall structure here. Yes, it's not SGF money. Instead, we raise the fees. That's still coming out of people's pockets. So I think that made the case that I was just making. Let's pay attention to what we're spending so that we don't have to raise fees in order to operate our parks program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you. And just to respond to that, nobody's holding a gun at these people's head to buy these permits. They willingly buy these permits. And the other thing that I'll make a deal is there are two different buckets here. The wildlife, the fish fund is different than the park fee fund. So none of the money that comes from the trout or on the wildlife side is commingled with the park money. It's a federal offense. We got in trouble back, oh my God, 10, 15 years ago by commingling that money. So that money is by federal, and they audit them quite often, is kept totally separate. That no park money can go there. The fee money, the wildlife money, the fishing license money goes in a separate bucket. So thank you.
All right, if there's no further discussion, I'm sorry, Representative Rajas, my fault.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All right, I'm on this budget. So everybody has an opinion, and I guess I'm one of those as well, and those in the committee know that if you want to know where the negatives come from, it came from me. Why the votes were close, and I'm going to explain a little bit. A couple years ago, we had a bad culture in wildlife and parks. They're trying, I know. But what triggered all this was procurement. And so we're aware, Representative, I've been working with wildlife and parks because it's not only shower houses, it is vehicles and those that need maintenance west of here because of the asinine procurement rules. I've heard it's Department of Administration. I've heard it's us. The enemy, we have met them, it is us. So if we have legislators have to change these procurement rules, you shouldn't have to drive 3 hours to get plumbing supplies. You shouldn't have to drag a dead vehicle 2 or 3 hours to get it fixed. This is what's done by people in basements with no windows making up these rules. They don't live in the reality. They don't live in the real world. They create positions and they make 6 figures because they know what's best. So yes, am I mad, not going to take it anymore? Yes, I am. We have great Kansas people, and they want to be outdoors. If they want to enjoy an adult beverage, they do. We're a free state. So I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of saying just because you're a fee agency, we have more than just oversight. I understand, and I don't know, maybe you don't get any emails. I get a ton of emails in the last few days because, yes, while I understand that park fees may need to be raised, the distribution, we need to have an honest conversation. If it's going to be at 3 or 4 locations, they're going to be much different than they are in my district. So do those need to be open? We want that opportunity. But on the other hand, I'm very proud of Kansas that 8% of it is privately owned, and I will fight for that. I don't want to be Nevada. I don't want to be those states that have over 80% of their land public land. So I'm sorry, Madam Vice Chair, but some of these situations we are working on, we're being aware, much like anything in state government, it takes forever to get things done. And you all know my time is short in this body, but we're going to fight to make sure that at least these procedures are done correctly. And so folks that are at Sebelius Reservoir in Norton don't have to haul their vehicle to Salina to get it fixed. That is wrong. Talk about waste of money. That is a waste of money. Sorry. Thank you.
All right, one more time, Representative Carpenter, and then we'll turn it back over to Representative Mosier, Chairman.
I hope you don't think that I'm going to argue with you over that issue. Okay, thank you for that. I agree with you 100%. And I don't want to change how much land the wildlife and parks owns in the state. I think that we need to do the procurement. That's ridiculous, and I agree with you 100%. So if you're looking for an argument from me, I'm on board. So, all right, thank you.
All right, good. Looks like further discussions are in order, and Chairman Mosier, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, the three gentlemen, with your opinions. In a private conversation with Wildlife and Parks, yes, the procurement, I have a hard time saying that word, the procurement process needs changing across all agencies. Chairman Rogers, having to haul a vehicle from Norton to Salina is obscene. And so we need to look at that. So thank you, Representative Sutton and Rogers, for bringing that up. The committee did receive the proposed park fee increases during their presentation. So Representative Carpenter, appreciative of the bill that's coming forward. If they had a 4-state around Kansas comparison of park fees, and we're behind. And if people, if you have a camper and want to go camp, these fees are not, they're not outrageous. And the proposed ones in today's world are, I think, are very reasonable. And so I appreciate Wildlife and Parks upping fees to help the entire park situation. The Wildlife Fee Fund and the Parks Fee Fund kind of came up, so I'm going to just elaborate on that a little bit. The Wildlife Fee Fund includes your hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses. And I have grandsons that have all three and love to do all three. And the Parks Fee Fund is your state park permit fees, any tolls, rentals, and any charges derived from the use, lease, or operation of state parks. So that's the background on the where the fee fund money comes from. So I guess this kind of spun off of the $36,000 or $3,632 action. So are there any other questions on, with that, I'll stand for questions on 2026.
Questions? We're going to go ahead and proceed to 27.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. All right, looking on page 4 of your committee report, if you look at EDIF, that money is used for park operations with an emphasis on, obviously not all the money goes there, but aquatic nuisance species and trying to, keep them in check, and also the invasive species across the grasslands in the park, the Serratia lespedeza, the red cedars, those kind of things. So they're trying to focus on, keeping the ecosystem healthy. So right now, the House Committee, we had, if you look at the governor's budget, she asked for 8 full-time employees with a huge amount of money. I don't have that right in front of me, but it was, oh, yes, I do. $1,037,000 for 8 FTEs, and also the equipment that is needed for them. After a very long discussion, we had 2 game wardens at the committee yesterday, and I had an opportunity to speak with them before committee started. And again, I'll remind you, 62 game wardens, park rangers, law enforcement officers to cover the entire state. And they both said to me very sincerely that we need more law enforcement across the state parks. And so after a good discussion, I was really pleased with the involvement and engagement of committee members on this. So under the current situation, law enforcement and game wardens and public lands officers are also at this time painting picnic tables and cleaning showers. And so the committee felt like instead of 8, we proposed to add 3 and just give a flat, yesterday, I just divided $1 million by 8 and 125,000 apiece. So we are proposing a flat $375,000 for 3 new additional FTEs in the law enforcement area of wildlife and parks. And I do have a breakdown of their current employees if anybody wants to visit about that, but there are no openings right now that can hold these specialized positions. And so the intent from Wildlife and Parks is that these 3 that are hired they will cross over as law enforcement and game wardens. And so the committee felt like, you know, this would be a good investment for Wildlife and Parks. If you look on page 4 of the other, I think it's the other, the agency request. If the park rangers will move up to law enforcement, there are different levels. You know, they'll need to hire other people, part-time people. They have a staff of 300 part-time people throughout the year. They can hire staff to paint picnic tables and do other maintenance at a much cheaper price than having our upper certified staff doing that work. And so the special committee concurred with the agency request. However, our House Budget Committee added the following adjustment: $375 from agency fee funds and 3 FTEs to hire additional law enforcement. And it's a drop in the bucket, but it's a start to get Wildlife and Parks the law enforcement that they need across the state of Kansas. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chair Mosier. A real quick follow-up on that. So of these 3 positions out of 465 total, how many, can you remind us again, how many law enforcement do we currently have? And where would these 3 new officers be stationed in the state?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We have 62. And that includes park rangers, game wardens, and law enforcement. And so these would specifically be game wardens / law enforcement. And they would be placed where the need is the greatest. I don't have any specific counties or areas, but that's.
Okay, good. And Representative Rajas.
I'll be quick. The way they explained it to us was the Secretary said they're in the process of revamping and kind of right positioning, right sizing this. So with those, because I asked kind of the same question in committee, and they said, well, we don't know right now as for specialty and positions and where, can't give a there you go. An Atlantic Pacific, yeah. So, but so that was kind of the idea, was give them the numbers, they can put them where they want, whether they would be, but he said they'll also be labeled as not park rangers, but as game wardens, but
They would-
still have the ability to do everything.
They would cross-train
Yeah.
as game wardens and law, and I do have their vacancy if anybody wants to know. 465 is a lot of employees, but this is a completely state encompassing organization. And
So Chairman, Chairwoman, the positions that would be the park rangers, the law enforcement, the game wardens, those, there are no vacancies in those.
there are no openings, because I asked this morning, I said, you know, I see you've got 465, are there any openings? And nothing for that level of staff.
Okay, good. Further questions? I do have one more question. When we look at the Wildlife Fee Fund, and it may be in here and I'm just missing it, it says that this comes from predominantly sale of hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses. We also sell park passes. So do you happen to have or can Clarity provide us the list of total revenues or receipts by those funds, whether it's the hunting or the fishing or the trapping or the park passes?
I do not have a breakdown of the income from those, but.
Do we have that, Dylan? Okay, that would be helpful if we can get that passed on to the committee. That would be just perfect. Any other questions? All right, you may, oh, yep, sorry, Representative Helgerson.
Did they ever get a sign for El Dorado Lake on Highway 54 showing that was the turnoff?
Representative Moser.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I am not privy to that information, but I can find that out for you.
I have to ask. They have an idea
Representative
what it was
Carpenter
asked.
will probably know.
So what part of Highway 54 are you looking at?
The main
Helgerson.
entrance.
East out of El Dorado?
Yeah. Main entrance, you go straight down. You remember we had the, was it,
The prison's out there, so.
yeah, the prison's out there. There's no there's no sign that says there's a turnoff. And they mentioned there was a problem with the Department of Transportation trying to get a sign located there so that people would know to turn off for the.
I think there is, but I will check. I drive past that like 500 times a day, so, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Representative Helgerson, will this change your decision to vote for this budget or not for this budget? It's crucial. It's crucial. I agree. All right. Any other questions? Representative or Chair Moser, you may make your motion.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I know some people at KDOT, and I'll reach out to them and find out what the status is of that sign. And with that, I move the Appropriations Committee approve the proposed budget of Kansas Wildlife and Parks as acceptable for 2026 and 2027 fiscal years as amended because of that, getting rid of the 36,
All right.
32.
There's been a motion on the floor with an amendment, and it is seconded by Representative Estes. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, committee, a few quick announcements. Yes, Representative Helgerson.
I know that the chair's gone. I was hopeful he'd be here so I could address the question. We're now starting to get some recommendation from the Senate that doesn't look like they're keeping in line with the original discussion that the speaker had with the chairs, and that was cut 200 million out. It seems that is an appropriate topic to have with Senate individuals, because if House recommendations are to cut budgets to reach that $200 million figure, and the Senate is upping it, it puts the conference committee at a very bad position, but it makes your life a lot more difficult. I would hope that someone would kick the Senate's fanny and tell them, if this is what they're trying to accomplish, then let's get an agreement. If not, I got a lot of amendments too.
Representative Helgerson, we nominate you. So you can go do that. But no, we will, I'll take that to our chairman and discuss that. And it's duly noted. And I think it's all of our responsibilities to try to cut where we can so we can make adjustments in other places as necessary. Chairman Mosier.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We do need to make a formal motion to delete the $3,632 from the EDIF from the budget for wildlife and parks. So I so move.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second by Representative Estes. All those discussion about that. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Nay. All right, that covers us there. Committee, I was asked to remind you there will not be a meeting tomorrow, but if you're in select committee, there is. There's also a health committee. Bethel is tomorrow, and we also wanted to Representative Carpenter.
Yeah, thank you for that, for reminding me, and it will be in the old Supreme Court room.
Is the time 9?
Yeah, Bethel will be in
What time?
8:30.
Okay, the time is 8:30. Tomorrow at 9:30, Select Committee will be in this room. Monday morning, we'll be back on our regular schedule with budgets and so forth. And I also wanted to make sure to go on the record that our earlier discussion with the bill hearing, KLRD and our revisers do a fantastic job. This bill has nothing to do with an absence of work or disclosure by KLRD or revisers. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're adjourned.